We learn in Portuguese but debate in English. But why? Well, because the world is small. We who work with the law, we have the obligation to learn and know its concepts, especially when it comes to international law. That's why we've decided to start this project, Debate and Learn, to put English in the classroom for our students. And today, I'm proud to present this new edition of the project Debate and Learn with our special guest, our special debater, Dr. Dallagnol. Thank you for being here, Dr. I'm very, very happy. Welcome to our project. Let me introduce you, our team, our Debate and Learn team. I have here Carolina Clemente and Sabrina Kalinsky. Girls, please introduce yourselves.
So my name is Carol. I am almost graduating in law. And I lived in Arizona for a year from my exchange student year. And yeah, that's it.
Hello, my name is Sabrina. I am halfway there. Currently in the 5th semester. I also lived abroad on an exchange. I went on an exchange program in 2018, and I went to Los Angeles in California. I also work with English as well as I study law, and I've worked with English for the past 6 years of my life.
Very nice. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
I'm available for any kind of question that you may have. And I beg your pardon already in the beginning. If you don't understand anything that I say, please ask me to repeat or to re-say it in some way.
Thank you. And today we will talk about corruption. Corruption affects the world, affects Brazil, affects our society. I want to start talking about the 2030 agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals. We, the people, have the obligation to end corruption because corruption starts with the people. And I want you to talk to us about how do you see it in our country? How do you see that Brazil may achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, some of it at least, or in part of it? But how corruption is delaying, is stopping us from getting there?
Very nice question. Corruption affects all other purposes of government because corruption diverts money which would be employed in health and education, in safety, in infrastructure, and so on. So when you have a state where there is systemic corruption, where there is 5% or 10% or 30% of the money which should be employed in benefit of society, being diverted in benefit of government officials, of course, society is going to suffer. But it's not only a matter of quantity, it's also a matter of quality, because when public officials decide to commit corruption, they begin to seek projects that could pay bribes. They change their switch and they begin to think about rent seeking all the time. And then they will choose not the projects which are the best ones for society, but they will choose the projects which are the best ones for their own pockets, for their own illicit enrichment, and also for them to invest part of the bribes in their elections and get re-elected. So when I look at all the sustainable goals which relates to public service, I think that corruption impacts all of them.
Indeed, I agree. Thank you. And also, now I'm going to pass the word to my students, but earlier today you were talking about Brazilians, that more than 80% of Brazilians believe that they can make a difference in the world in the fight society. I think it's Carol who's going to talk about society. Carol, please.
So we have, I'm talking for myself because young people doesn't have a lot of faith in politics. We are in the election year, so we are only on two parties, right? The right and the left. How do you see your faith in our next government? Which one is going?
Actually, I don't focus so much on the president. When I think about anti-corruption, I focus much more in the Congress, because it's the Congress which may change the constitution and re-establish the possibility of imprisonment after a conviction or after a conviction in second instance, and without that we have full impunity regarding white-collar criminals. When I think about Congress, I think that it's only Congress which may end the privileged forma, which works as a protection, as a shield which protects corrupt officials from prosecution, high-level corrupt officials. I think about Congress also because even when we don't like Supreme Court decisions, such as a decision that impaired justice by preventing the execution of the conviction after the second instance, you can change that decision through Congress, change the constitution. And more than that, Congress may develop a role of fiscalizing the Supreme Court, specifically the Senate. And more than that, Congress may also reform the judiciary so that Congress could establish different requisites so that a person may become a minister of our Supreme Court. So Congress can impact the fight against corruption in so many ways that it is the main place where the fight against corruption can occur in a country. So when I think about this particular subject, I usually focus on Congress. And that is a theoretical reason for focusing on Congress, but I also have a pragmatic reason for focusing on Congress. And it is the fact that when you discuss about the president, who should be the president, most of people will discuss, have very hot debates, but when you look at Congress, most of people will agree about what we want there. We want there people prepared for the position, for exercising power in Congress, who are prepared to face the main challenges of Brazil. More than that, we want people who fights corruption, who establish good statutes against corruption, and you want people who agree to renew the political persons who occupy this position, people who agree to shrink that electoral fund which diverted the money from health, education, infrastructure to invest in public campaigns. But it's not a little bit of money, it's like rivers of money, in a way that they may decide who is going to be elected and who is not going to be elected. And the persons who decide that are the chiefs of the parties, the owners of the parties that we have in Brazil. So we all agree what we want, would be a good congressman, a good congresswoman, and we don't have that there. So in a pragmatic way, I think that we should focus on Congress. We should focus on strategies to put in Congress people who could change our reality regarding anti-corruption laws, regarding the way in which the subject of corruption is dealt in Parliament.
Indeed, indeed. And with that in mind, we have to think, how can we transform Brazil? Transforming Brazil,
Sure.
We can transform the world also.
Sure.
Sabrina, please.
Well, in 2021, we had a corruption perception index. From a scale of 0 to 100, 100 being the less corrupt countries, and 0 being, well,
when you look at the International Corruption Index, you have the grade, where, as I said, 100 would be the least possible corruption country, and 1 would be the worst one, and you have also the position in the anti-corruption index, and then you invert, then you do the opposite. The first ones are the least corruption, and the last ones are the most corrupt. And when the index is a reference for measuring corruption in countries, but the index is not perfect, and there are some reasons which influence the index, which does not represent necessarily that the country got more or less corrupt. For example, when there is a major scandal of corruption in a country, naturally the country will have a worse grade, will decrease its position in honesty, but that was due to the fact that people are more aware about scandal, and not because things got worse. And in fact, when there is a scandal, it is a sign that the country is fighting against corruption indeed. And even though that, the country tends to have a worse grade in the index. So what matters for me is the general grade that the country receives, which allows us to have an idea of how we are, and we are very bad. We are very bad, and we have been in a very bad position for a decade or more. And more than that, we don't have only an index. We have what Karwash reviewed. Karwash reviewed a monster of corruption. It made a diagnosis of corruption that is very clear, that corruption is pervasive all over Brazil in different levels, in different offices of the government. And the thing today is not so much how bad corruption is in Brazil, but the thing is what we can do about that. Because we already discovered that if we take good laws, good statutes, good proposals in the hands of the wrong people, they will do nothing about that. And what we had in our Congress over the last years is the fact that our Congress has passed pro-corruption laws and not anti-corruption laws. And so we come again to the fact that if we want to change things, we want to focus on our Congress. We have to put our focus on our Congress. And society has made that. And society has launched a project which is called 200 More. And the idea of the project is to put more than 200 people in our Congress which are committed with the fight against corruption. And it's a non-partisan project. And I would like to invite everybody to know this project and to broadcast it, to talk about that, because if we want to change Brazil, we have to begin changing the environment around us and inviting people to get engaged. And if you want to know more about that, please visit the site www.200 in numbers, more, but in Portuguese, mais.com. And then you can know the project. And thank you for your questions, that allowed me to bring not only some knowledge about the anti-corruption index, but also a way in which we can engage in change.
Well, we do see some very obvious signs of corruption in our everyday life, from the pavement of the streets to healthcare and schools. And I wanted to ask you, do you believe that our system allows corruption to happen more than it should? Do you believe that it could actually change in the next few years?
I believe in change.
Election and Congress changing, do you believe that the system will stop allowing that?
I believe in changing, I believe based on evidence that many countries which were very corrupt ones were able to change the anti-corruption indexes, and nowadays are the ones which are in the best positions of the international Transparency International Anti-Corruption Index. So I believe that we can, and more than that, we have new opportunities of changing each 4 years. And when you talk about corruption in everyday life, and when you talk about corruption in Congress, we have to distinguish the levels of corruption in the two environments. Some people say that we have a lot of corrupt politicians because we have a corrupt society, but the evidence does not warrant that. What I have seen based, for example, in the barometer of corruption is research made by Transparency International, is a poll made by Transparency International too, is that when you look at the lower levels of the social pyramid in Brazil, you have relatively low levels of corruption. However, when you look at the point of the pyramid, of the social pyramid, and you look at the political world, you have high levels of corruption. And what explains the difference is the fact that you have different incentives and disincentives. You have a different system running in each place, and people are influenced by the costs and benefits of each conduct that they decide to perform, but they also influenced by pressures that they suffer. And when you look at the political environment, you have no punishment at all. You have, in the cost-benefit analysis, the people who commit corruption have a lot of good benefits and almost no costs. And they suffer a lot of pressures, besides that, in direction of committing corruption, because the politicians who commit corruption are the ones who are able to get a lot of bribes, which they use also to get re-election, to invest in their political campaign and raise the probability, the likelihood of them to get re-elected. So there are a lot of pressures in the political environment in favor of corruption, which make politicians much more prone to corruption than the average Brazilian. So I think that we have to distinguish these both situations in order for us to choose and to pay attention to what kinds of status and incentives we have to change in order to have a clear country. And if we have to choose any priority, for sure, in my opinion, we would have to choose the changing of incentives in the political world. We would have to change or to end the privileged form, which works, as I said, as a shield against persecution, as a shield against punishment in benefit of powerful agents. You have to change electoral rules. You have to change the number of parties, which made it very difficult for the president to govern and much more prone the environment in favor of corruption, and so on. So if I had to choose, I would invest changing the environment in the higher level political world today.
Indeed. With that in mind, and with the awareness of people about corruption, we still have faith in our political system. I think we will get there someday. We have been working a lot to get to a clean country. Thank you, Mr. Dallagnol, Dr. Dallagnol. Thank you very much for being with us for this edition of our debate on our team. And thank you very much.
I thank you, and I would like to congratulate you for this initiative, and I wish that you may, in the future, maybe return to the United States, not anymore for an exchange program, but maybe for a LLM, a Master of Laws in some place. I'm sure that you're going to love that too. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.